p.m. This is the Communication and Policy Committee of the Concord School Board. I am the chair, Cara Meeker, with me. It's been a day. Here with me, our fellow members Liz Boucher and Jim Richards. From the district, we have Matt Cashman and Karen Fisher-Anderson. Today, we only have one thing on the agenda, which is our first discussion of new changes to Policy 741, which is around facilities use and their fees. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to review the documents. Oh, it looks like they included in the pile. I had gotten these a few days, maybe even before they went into the folder for everybody. And so I had pre-submitted some comments and questions to Kathleen, who had sent the policy changes my way. So it looks like they went ahead and printed out those comments for us tonight. So if that is confusing, that is because those are my personal notes. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to either Matt or Karen to kind of give us an intro of why this is coming to us now and why the recommendations have come this way. So I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Okay, so first and foremost, we're talking about 741, and it has a second number. I think it's 821, which means it appears in two sections. This is a recommended policy, but when you look at the date of it, you'll see, I think the last time we updated it was 2010. Whew, 2010. And this is an area that we knew we needed to tighten up because we do a lot of facility use rentals. And so what I did when Kathleen pulled the policy and we had some people asking questions, I went ahead and obviously looked at what we have, and then I pulled some, like I usually do. I took a look at both New Hampshire School Board Association. There were two policies. I have them here if y'all want them for any reason. KF, which is kind of fun, and then KFA. So on conduct on school property, which gets into some of the prohibited conduct that I recommended in this policy. I also took a look at a little bit of Merrimack. I liked some of their stuff, and then Kathleen gave me her alma mater, Hampton School District policy that she helped write when she was there. And then finally, I also took a look at Bedford, because Bedford's a lot like us as far as size and facility use. And so what I did was, obviously, I took the existing policy, tried to keep as much of it as I could, but unfortunately, as I told you a few minutes ago, there were some more specifics that needed to be added. So that's what you'll see in the red sections, obviously more on pages 3 and 4, and a little bit on 5, and bring this forward for you all to, take a look at, consider, see if you like the language, and go from there and answer any questions that we can. And obviously, Matt's our subject matter expert as far as a lot of this, but I did meet, just so you know, I like to go out to the subject matter experts. So, 6-7 weeks ago, I met with Jack Dunn, Glenna Constantine, who actually is working as the district's facility rental coordinator part-time, and Matt and I, and we discussed how, our policy is currently written. We looked at a couple others. We talked about things we wanted to try and tighten up, and so this was our best move forward to try and bring you something that we hoped would put more meat on the bones. So I can provide, the source of where most of this came from. But Cara, if you want to, obviously you're the chair, I can walk through it, or if you want to go through and then add your comments, I have a couple comments in light of your comments, but however you want to do it.
Great. Before we move on, can we just briefly look at facility use fees? I don't think this was in our folder.
It was not. I just handed it out and it will be in color if it's when it's finally approved.
Okay.
So
this was. Oh, this is the upcoming schedule.
Yes, this is for July. Our policy says we'll update every year, and so July 1 is supposed to be the time frame. And so we had an existing one from 2016. It's been updated over the years, and it's broken out into the three groups, as you can see: for-profit, for nonprofit, and then for specific school district activities or groups affiliated with the school district. And so that's why you have the three columns.
Okay. I'm just going to read this group C real quick because it's going to have an impact on some of the questions I have about who and how we prioritize our rentals to. So I'm just going to read this. So group C, Concord School District activities or affiliated groups, such as parent, teacher, and student organizations, youth organizations in the community, activities and or fundraising events by local organizations for the benefit of district schools or youth of the Concord School District, Concord City Government, and Recreation Departments. Okay.
Now, one of the policies that overlaps with this policy is the exchange of facilities. It's a Concord School District policy 741.1, and that's where we work closely with departments of the city of the department within the city of Concord to exchange facilities without rental charges. Parks and Rec, we don't really rent our athletic fields, you'll see, they're not here, but we work very closely with them and exchange facilities without a charge.
So that is separate from this particular rental. So they wouldn't involve themselves in the rental process? They wouldn't go online and fill out the form?
No, but they communicate. So let's say Parks and Rec with basketball, they talk to our athletics department. The schools book all of the spaces first for all of our needs, and then as soon as we fill all of our spaces, we open it up to the city, and then they usually take the rest of the time slots that work for their programs.
Oh, okay.
So like basketball through Park and Rec would have to rent through the rental coordinator, the facilities rental coordinator.
Communicate through them, but they don't. Our facility use P doesn't.
Right,
Policy
not
doesn't
actually pay
require.
to rent it, but that they would they'd have to call up to communicate. So
Correct.
any of the fields would be the same outside.
And we don't schedule fields.
So anyone from the community can just come and use
Correct.
the field. Okay.
Gotcha. So I guess the reason I'm asking is just because I noticed that that particular policy that you brought to us is pretty short.
Yep.
And so because the facility use fees policy, as with a lot of our reviewed policies lately, is getting much longer, and so because we have to add details that are necessary, are you suggesting that we maybe visit 741.1 in regards to exchange of facilities to incorporate language around the online portal or how that scheduling takes place, or are you comfortable with the sort of handshake agreement we have now?
I'm comfortable. It's something that's worked forever with both groups. We have a good communication back and forth with
Okay.
David Gill and his crew at Parks and Rec. So if it's working, I don't think we need to fix that particular issue.
Fair enough.
And that's
All
part
right.
of our agreement anyway.
Okay. I mean, I'm all for a one-sentence policy. Oh, wait, two-sentence policy, if it is working for us. I did notice it hasn't been revised since 1983, so the handshake agreements must be working very
They
well.
are. They
And
are.
a testament to relationships. So please let us know if that changes.
I suspect it might
will.
with the new changes coming to Memorial Field and everything else, but it'll be a while.
Okay. Oh, great.
Do we want to just say that we reviewed and the date, so people know that we did review it, but no changes were made, or does that not matter?
As long as we have a key, like as long as someone knows that the words reviewed 2024 means that it was looked at and not necessarily,
Okay, I see.
Like
Don't use that-
modified?
We don't use that other
Well,
places.
right?
I was gonna say, brought to the board for comment or approval would be some, if we reviewed it, it kind of implies that the board,
Right.
whole board had to look at it.
Yeah. So I would say no, unless, I mean, we can certainly talk about citations and how we do that, right? Without, because I don't want to
Yeah.
confuse anyone by saying, like, we looked at this, we reviewed it, we considered modifications, we brought it to the board. Like, what does reviewed mean?
You're right, no, I understand the point.
Yeah. So, but I'm talking out loud because I'm thinking about your point, which is a really good one.
I just don't want 10 years from now, someone to be like,
Yeah.
this was never looked at?
Yeah. So that's definitely something, I'm gonna make a note of that, and we can talk about that. Jim or Liz, do either of you have any questions about the policy as it exists now, or the changes that were in your folder, which again, were not necessarily what's printed out here. It's a mix of my comments and the original draft one.
Yeah, I have to say I haven't gone through the entire thing, but I haven't, are we going to go line by line? What's
Yeah,
the
do you
plan?
wanna? Let's go ahead and do that. So what we have, as with most of our policies, is an introduction and purpose, just to kind of explain why we have the policy to begin with. Something that you're gonna see new today that you haven't seen in your packet, in your folder, is a definitions section. That is a suggestion that I had made, which was to essentially pull out language where we're sort of ad hoc defining things as we go and just go ahead and formalize it in a definitions section. I added a few definitions that I thought would be helpful, because as we move through, you'll see we're talking about several different kinds of fees. Some fees are waived depending on the organization and some are not. So I thought it was worth defining each individual fee so that we're clear on what can be waived and what cannot be waived. From there, section B is essentially the fees and the authorized uses of our school facilities, and its language around who has fees waived that are listed out. It talks about required insurance, a certificate of liability, as well as holding the district harmless for anything that may have happened during any kind of event. And there is this last sentence. This policy is consistent with the City of Concord and Concord School District's agreement for the cooperative use of facilities and recreational areas. I definitely want to visit that sentence. That's from the original policy. The next section, C, is the school facility rental process. So it's how somebody actually executes a rental. So it explains who is in charge of rentals, which is the facilities rental coordinator, how applications must be made to the district, which is through an online portal, with the exception that if somebody cannot use the online portal, that the coordinator helps them to fill something out. It prioritizes activities, which I think we definitely need to discuss. So for instance, C3, school-sponsored activities have priority. Second is official activities of the City of Concord. And third, those activities serving youth in the community. I think that's worth the conversation. And then what happens when somebody wants to cancel a rental. Section D is restrictions on the use. So once they have access to the facility, what they can and cannot do. You'll see things as far as parking, where food and drink can go, whether things can get stuck on the wall, all that good stuff. Unfortunately, pyrotechnical machines are prohibited. Section E is about security for events. Definitely have some comments here as well, which is, who constitutes a trained security person and who needs to be on premises. Section F is prohibited conduct. I did have some questions about that, if there was language elsewhere that got pulled in to this particular policy, because as we're reading, you'll see that everything is in red. So this is all new language. So I'm going to assume that this is built on other language, either in other districts, and we're taking those recommendations, the School Board Association, or elsewhere in our own policy that's being pulled over into this policy. But it's, pretty standard. No damaging things, no threatening, bullying, harassing, and then also includes what will happen if somebody violates any of those provisions. You'll see F2, I definitely want to discuss more. It is a single sentence about possessing firearms while using a facility. Currently, it says students are prohibited from possessing firearms on school property, and all adults are requested not to possess weapons on school property. I want to make sure that ties in, I see you pulling, ties in with our weapons policy as well as state and federal law. The final section is just one sentence about enforcement, which is essentially that anybody can be asked to leave school grounds if they violate the policy. With that, I will open it up to questions.
Cara, did you want to, Yours, I'd be happy to address if you'd like to, or you'd want to, however you want to do it, because I did go ahead and answer those that you had asked, if that's helpful. But
It is. I don't want to necessarily monopolize the time with my own questions if Liz and Jim have questions that they want to discuss now, but if not, then I'm happy to start with my questions.
Under definitions, is it worthwhile to put school and non-school functions as definitions? Because as it goes down for non-school functions versus school functions, or does that tie into the groups that are renting?
Yes, that's why I have questions about what's considered.
So if a school function would be Group C, is how I understand that to be. Anything that the school
Right.
sponsors.
I mean, that would be a good question for Matt, which is, are, let's say, city government meetings that the rental price is waived for something like that, but it's still not a school function. But they fall within this group C.
Correct. So just last Friday, we had a city school meeting here. Obviously, those would not be, there's no charge for that. There's voting, as you know, held in the schools. There's no charge for that. Those are part of the facility, city, school, and facility policy.
But those things are, if we're trying to create definitions and create categories, it's not a school function to have an election, like to have voting take place at school, but it sort of like falls under the same group in terms of pricing, which is that it's waived as a school function, because it's all like school functions and qualifying non-school functions all fall into this group C. Is that accurate?
Yeah, but I think when it comes to the city, we have the standing agreement with them that they are not charged for use in our schools for any activity that they want to conduct. They schedule through us, they talk to us, we make sure that there's no overlap on the schedule, so it's coordinated, but there's no fee.
Okay. So let's say I'm a member of the Girl Scouts of America. I want to have a fundraiser and sell cookies, and I'm going to donate all that money to the schools. Is that a school function or a non-school function? I would fall under Group C, right? Because I
It
would
is.
be a civic group that is participating in an event that benefits the district, but is it still considered a non-school function?
Yes.
Well, it
So
could or
it's-
couldn't be, depends on the Girl Scouts, or some of the Girl Scouts are in our district, I suppose. It can get complicated.
But it falls into Group C. So that answers your question.
Right. So the only reason I'm asking
Yeah.
is because if we are going to create defined terms, I just want to make sure we're being accurate. So what I had done is I had pulled civic group as a definition. It was elsewhere in the language before.
Yep.
Because it had that list of included organizations. So a civic group means a group or nonprofit organization whose mission benefits school-aged children residing primarily in Concord, including but not limited to the Boy Scouts of America, Big Sisters of America, Girl Scouts of America, the YMCA, and the Boys and Girls Club. So,
Whose specific mission benefits children, is that what you're
Right,
saying? Because
yeah.
there could
Yeah.
be, that could be open, any civic group is a huge group of organizations, or it could be anything, it could be a church group, right? Who, they do benefit children, just maybe not in the mission.
right, so how do we decide the difference between Group B and Group C, I guess, is, in terms of pricing? Is
I'll
it,
let you talk more to it, but some are for-profit and not-for-profit.
right,
So-
so what, if I'm a nonprofit organization, let's say I'm Red River Theaters, I'm a movie
Right.
theater
Right.
that shows movies to both adults and children, and programming, free programming for both adults and children. I'm a nonprofit organization. Can I get myself into Group C because we are hosting an event that like basically helps the children of the community?
So I'll take a stab. The first, you would have a 501c3 policy designated designating you as a nonprofit, and that would put you into Group B.
Okay.
I think what you're asking is if that nonprofit group is requesting the use of the facility for another reason, but it's to benefit kids.
Right, because it
Do
says
they
here,
fall
activities
into-
and or fundraising events by local organizations for the benefit of district schools or youth
Yeah.
in the Concord School District.
So do the YMCA, do any of these after-school programs, are they charged? Is the YMCA or the Boys and Girls Club to use those buildings? Do we charge them to rent those after-school spaces?
We do, and we always have. We have an agreement, and Jack I meant to say earlier, we're also looking to have a finance committee meeting where we would bring this fee structure in front of them as well.
Because then I see that's where it gets dicey,
Right.
because they're nonprofits, they serve kids, why are they paying a facility fee?
I think when we have that facilities or finance committee meeting, we may want to obviously ask that question, but you could also combine the two groups to discuss that issue. But we have had rental agreements with them and currently have them with both groups at our schools for the after-school programs, and we have for a while.
And they're are they 501c3s? 21C, and I know YMCA is, okay.
So I think they are making money
Right,
off
they're
of it.
charging for their
Right.
services.
So if it's not only servicing, are they charging for their
Right.
service?
Right. Which is part of the fee structure because it basically says the fee is waived as long as
They're not charging.
they're not charging. So yes, that part is covered.
Yeah. They can do one of two things. They can either, if they're raising money, then they're either supposed to pay for the rental fees, okay, or they put the money back into the general fund for the use of the kids.
But what about a PTO or a PTA where they might charge for an event,
Right.
like at Abbott Downing Dance, I'm just thinking, and
Yeah.
that goes back into the PTO, but it doesn't go back into the general fund?
Right, so they're supposed to pay fees.
That would be a real big bummer.
Yep. And this is gonna be a bummer for a lot of people because we do charge. We just need to be transparent about it. Because every time we use our buildings, there's wear and
Right.
tear and custodian fees and all that kind of stuff, so.
Right.
I get it, but then these PTOs and PTAs that are trying to make money to give back to their school community,
Right.
they're not gonna host it in school anymore. Where are they gonna host it? They just won't have these events.
Well, as long as they put it back into the general fund, they can.
But they're trying to raise money for their organization that serves the school, similar to the general fund.
And currently, the way that it is defined, like for instance, our PTO had a bake sale, so rather than charge attendance, they just had a bake sale. So that's not really charging anyone. There's not an entry fee. It's just an added piece where you can buy things
And they did it during school hours, probably.
after
But
school.
see, but that's still raising money for the organization.
Well, they don't necessarily do it during school hours
Some of the fundraisers do, though, that's why.
sometimes.
Yeah,
But if you have a band, booster organization that is selling things, in a section of the school when something else is going on, like in the evenings, that could occur.
yep. I guess what I'm trying to get at is, if you do it during school hours, like the fundraisers they do sometimes, remember how we had to talk about how many per year? Then there's no additional costs associated. But if we're allowing organizations to come in and use the school, then we have to man it. We have to have somebody in the building to oversee. If it's a fundraiser, we have to, custodian fees, we have to clean the building unless they're cleaning natural, as part of their regular duties. But it's the extra costs that are incurred. Do we suck that up as a school district or?
Right, which is a great question, which I think is getting to a couple points, which is one, I really feel like we need proper definitions for who is in and who is out in terms of the waived fee. Because Group B and Group C do have overlap, so I just want to be cognizant of that. And then also, I'm seeing on this sheet, these facility use fees, there's only one fee in terms of like time, the fee associated with the space and the number of hours used. but there are actually several fees that may or may not be waived. So the actual rental fee can be waived if you're in Group C, but we also have custodial fees that are mentioned.
Right.
Potential damage fees that are mentioned, quote-unquote extra setup fees that are mentioned.
Yep.
And now we're adding language about needing to have staff on site, physically on site, at the expense of the renter. And I don't know where that belongs. Is that part of the rental fee that's waived, or is that a standalone fee that now gets added on? So those are definitely some big questions we want to address.
You want me to hit that one?
Yeah.
Okay,
Go
the additional, okay, so you have your rental fee, which is for the use of the facility itself. We have to have the building manned by an employee of the district, okay? The person that is usually there, and we use them because A, they know the buildings, and B, they're working, are the custodians. And so if they're like a civic group during the week, Monday through Friday, while the custodians are there, we don't charge that custodian fee, okay? Because we have to do it anyway. Saturdays, it's time and a half, and we don't, that doesn't, you know, it's charged into the, I don't know, what do you call it, the general fund, I think, that out of the money for the
It's
district.
paid
they're
for out of the general fund.
Right, and then, like, for example, we have churches who rent Krista McCullough School on Sundays, have for many years. We have a custodian there for all purposes. Let's say you have a toilet overflow or something happen.
Security.
He gets paid twice his, but we don't charge them a,
We don't charge them a separate fee. It's
Right, it's
included
in
in
the-
the overall annual rental. So if we're talking about the church that rents at Krista McAuliffe on Sundays, they pay the fee for the use, they pay for the custodial fee because it's an outside group.
right,
We're overall responsible for the building. So obviously, if trash builds up, if the space needs to be cleaned for the next day, next school day, security, as I mentioned, we need to make sure whoever group is in there, that the building is locked at the end of the day when everyone leaves. And so for that particular situation, we incorporate that into the annual fee, which is paid on a monthly basis.
Can I ask, how common is it to negotiate an annual contract with a group? So is it worth it to have it in the policy in terms of just addressing that, you know, negotiated contracts are at the discretion of the district and the superintendent, and so they don't have to abide by this structure?
honestly, I would advise less is more. I think if you start putting up prices and negotiated contracts, you're gonna have groups arguing, I should get what they get, because we're the same.
Well, I think even just acknowledging that a single sentence that says, you know,
Or negotiate.
annual or negotiated contracts or special contracts are allowable at the discretion of the superintendent, period.
Yeah, because you have
Whatever.
I think
YMCA,
that-
21C churches, we have
Right.
a quilting club that's been there for a while, so,
I think if you put that language in
Yeah.
there, that would be
It
appropriate.
just covers it, yeah.
does.
Because because I'm not in the weeds with you, this is
Right.
the first I'm learning that people can create contracts
Sure.
or initiate agreements with the district that is outside of this normal online portal rental system, right?
It doesn't happen all that frequently. It's
Okay.
for the churches and the YMCA and the Boys and Girls Club. But I think that discussion should be held jointly with the finance committee.
Yeah.
Because the two really overlap quite a bit with each other when it comes to that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're on finance with me, aren't you? The chair of finance. We've got 2 finance members here
Yeah.
already, so
Yep.
we'll keep it on the brain.
Yeah.
So we have the facility rental fee, which may or may not be waived, and sometimes can include custodial fees. So, and custodial fees may apply if it's outside of school hours, if that's what I'm hearing.
right.
We have damage fees, which obviously are assessed on a case-to-case basis.
Correct.
And then we have potentially, if it's not a custodian, we have the cost of a designated district employee who needs to be physically on site.
Correct. Like, let's say we have to have an administrator in the building, then we would
Okay.
pay them.
So then, but I'm now confused of Group C. So if everything that falls under Group C, like PTOs, Park and Rec, anyone, they are still using the building, but they have no fee associated with them.
Right.
But they still have the setup and clean up, the employee fee and the custodial fee. Because then
So-
Park and Rec will still then pay those?
They don't pay that because of the agreement. So they use our buildings on Saturdays, our gyms. And because of the agreement, they don't pay a fee. But we still have the responsibility, it's our buildings. We still have the responsibility, as we talked about, cleaning, securing at the end of the day. And then also if there's say a toilet overflows or there's a ruptured pipe,
Right.
you know,
So we're eating that cost.
if you want to term it that way, but that's part of the.
I get
that's part
I
of
get the agreement. I'm
with the
not trying
city,
to.
though,
Yeah,
with the
no,
city.
I'm not trying. But then I'm wondering: could there be a special agreement for PTOs and PTAs, where their mission is to benefit specifically that school where they're operating in?
So I think if you write that into the policy as Cara suggested, that probably wouldn't be a bad thing.
Specifically those groups
You could do that.
Right.
versus, but I'm just trying to think of what other groups use these facilities that may or may not be paying these fees.
Now, the other thing I did, as I told you earlier, this graph, when I started this project, I found a list of, here's what I was given, of fees. Okay, this is what it was. Okay, when I was searching around through the different policies, I used the scale of groups A, B, and C to help explain from Merrimack. So
Oh,
we're
like how
not
they wrote
bound
it.
by that. That's how Merrimack broke them out. So if you guys want to divide them differently,
Well, it's easier than reading this.
so, I mean, that just hadn't been updated for a
Yeah.
while, so I was looking for, okay, let's give them some more meat on the bones here and break it out by
Yeah.
groups.
Does
But
Hampton have
I can
something
see
like
where
that
there could
too?
be some confusion between B and C, and obviously you want C if you can, because you
Yeah.
can
This is Hampton.
not pay.
Yeah.
But we can further delineate that with the business heads, I guess.
This is a kind of a random aside. I apologize. Are there any groups that are not eligible to rent facilities in the district?
That are not eligible? If you think of a for-profit, you have the fee structure for Group A. Let's say they rent our facility, we have a bad experience, there's damage, they refuse to pay. Let's say they don't pay, or we've had this happen before, not frequently, but if they don't pay, if they act out of accordance with the policy, then we can make a determination to not recommend them to rent again if they approached us. We have that discretion to do
Which I
that.
think should.
Right, but I don't think, overall, my understanding is we don't rent to commercial enterprises who are in here for profit. In other words, a driving school. We're not supposed to be renting to people who then turn around and make a profit off of using our facilities solely. And that's that should be, I believe it's in there, because I remember, I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah, will you look for that while I
So
write
they
this down?
can make a profit as long as they're serving the children of our community, like a YMCA or Boys and Girls Club.
As long as they either pay for the use of the facility, or they put the money back into the general fund account.
Well, okay, so as they rent the facility, so couldn't that be the same for any for-profit too, who's even making money?
But they're not, all they're doing is paying rent to use the place. They're not,
Benefiting children.
correct.
Okay, I'm just trying.
Although I suppose you could argue a driving school who rents,
Benefiting
if
children.
they're getting some of our students, but
Right.
that isn't on our list of priorities. As far as rental goes.
Do we
Here it is,
actually
it's
have
under,
a
it's
list
number
of-
3 on page 2, under 2D, and then it goes number 3. Shall not be used for commercial enterprises unless approved by the superintendent.
Okay, so
All right,
at least there's a,
yep, B3,
Yeah, and that's part of the old language too.
unless approved by the superintendent or the, okay, perfect.
I was just gonna say, Kara, that under enforcement, G,
Yep.
that might be a place to put,
I just noted it, that they could lose their eligibility for extensive damage or delinquent payment.
yeah, or just don't abide
Or
by
any-
Right, or violate the policy.
violate the policy,
I would tie it to the policy.
and just leave it at that, and then it's the discretion of how they
Perfect.
violated it.
Yep. At the discretion of the superintendent, is that a good phrasing?
Yes, I
Right.
think so. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we'll separate that out in the definitions. While we're working on the definitions, I did comment that we mention in the introduction the use of school property, or was it the introduction? I think it was. It was in the introduction. I moved it to the definitions section, but it had been included. School property means any buildings, vehicles, property, land, or facilities used for school purposes or school-sponsored events or activities, whether public or private. But then the rest of the document, we talk about school facility.
Yep.
I am going to assume that school facilities is really what we're talking about. We're not talking about use of vans or,
Do we run our?
No, I don't. And I'm glad you pointed out, when I
Buses?
reviewed this after your notes, I'm glad we're talking about it because we don't rent our vans.
okay.
What about our buses?
We haven't rented our buses.
And the same with fields, right? You said,
In fields, we don't get into scheduling that because that would, how do you manage that?
yeah,
People can
so.
So we're
use
really
public
just talking
space.
about buildings.
Yeah.
Correct.
And
Okay.
Kara, I may have opened Pandora's box because I'm the one who added the definition of school property.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was wide open, and I'm like, okay, what exactly are we saying is available? But I thought when I was looking at the definitions that facility rental, or excuse me, the definition of, what is it, school facility and school property were sort of the same.
I mean, I think it can be as simple as school facility means any building owned by the school district, really. Because I don't know if it really needs to say that it is used for school purposes or school-sponsored events or
No.
activities. It's just a
Right.
building that is owned and used by the school district.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if it owned, leased, or, I mean, we own it all, right?
own it,
Okay, good.
Right.
We don't have a mortgage out on anything, okay. So yeah, I think it could be as simple as that, and then we could take out school property altogether.
Makes sense.
Okay, let me ask a question. Hypothetically, somebody rents a gymnasium. In addition to the gymnasium, and we have guidance there, let's say they say, as part of our gym, we don't rent our showers, believe it or not. But let's say they want showers. Okay, that technically, I suppose, would be part of the building, but would it also be part of a facility used for school purposes or school? So that's the only, but I think it's covered within the
I
building.
think it's covered.
So, but that could be broken out if they want additional, shower spaces and stuff like that. There's additional things that have to go on.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Say someone rents, well, they would rent from the city, the track, right?
Correct.
What about,
Or you say rent. I
well,
mean,
I
they
mean,
would coordinate with the city. If it was an
well, but
outside.
no, I'm talking about,
A track camp.
track camp or Jim's relays, right? And I have Jim's relays, and I invite a bunch of schools in and stuff, and we're gonna have relays on the track. Do I automatically get to use our hurdles and jumping pits and all
Oh,
the
the
equipment
equipment.
associated with it? Because that's school property, not city property.
Right.
How do we handle that? Do we just let them do that? Because there's a potential of tremendous wear and
And liability.
liability.
Let's say somebody
So
drags
I'm-
along a bridge or whatever you call it, and they get hurt on it,
Right, but we require them have their own certificate,
right?
and
So
we
that's not
also
the
ask that they
facility.
are held harmless for anything that takes place at the
Right.
school
You
facility.
bring your own stuff.
Yeah, you think so?
I think you bring your own stuff.
That's not what we do now necessarily.
I'm not saying it's what, I mean, I just feel like
Yes.
if you have your own program, you would bring your own equipment. The same, like if I have a birthday party somewhere, I'm bringing my birthday party supplies to the rented
Yeah.
space.
Well,
But
I just,
often
Unless
they
it's
will
concluded.
they will
Unless
rent
that's included,
equipment.
but then that's
more
another
money.
charge.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's the question is, do we rent those in addition, or is, so that would not be a facility or a building, that would be equipment.
An equipment
So-
rental.
So I'm
Right.
just curious how that plays in here, or do we go with Liz and say, no, that we don't rent our buses and our equipment?
Which would
I
make it easier,
think it's a
clearer.
good question. We certainly can ask athletics how they process through that, but use of the track, we don't get involved with.
Right.
The city knows what we're requesting to use for the track for meets. So if an outside group comes in, they're gonna work through the city.
Okay.
And if there's openings after we have it scheduled for our school district, then they schedule accordingly.
But what does the track include? Does it include all our equipment? Doesn't the school
So-
own that?
I believe so, but I don't wanna
Yep.
answer you without asking that question of our athletic director.
Okay.
I can tell you in
You know, I don't know.
Maybe
Merrimack
it's
or
basketballs
Hampton.
too, and maybe it's,
Right, or just
soccer
thinking
goals
about
or
things
something,
things
Keep track of all
inside.
that
Yeah.
stuff, and then
Right.
have to go through and see what, do we need to replace them
Just-
sooner? Did we
Right.
lose some?
Something missing.
Just curious as to.
Yeah, because you're
That's a
right.
good question.
Well,
Liz, you're
even
right
things
about
as
the,
like tables and chairs.
Tables
you're
and
right
chairs.
about the, in here, under the Hampton School policy, they charge for mats and volleyball nets and
Scoreboard.
bleachers. So, I don't know. We haven't included that as a fee. When I talked to Glenna about it, it's usually just the gymnasium. We have not had people asked to use the shower, because then I was like, if they're gonna use the showers, we need their adult supervision, because gosh knows what can go on in the locker
Yeah.
rooms. So, but we haven't had that yet, but that could be a potential. So, that's a great question we'll have to look into.
Right, because I was just thinking, I mean, somebody who rents the cafeteria, do they have access to the tables and the chairs in the cafeteria?
So as part of their request for rental, we have them fill out a rental form on our software.
Yep.
And that, it pulls you to answer those questions. If you have X amount of people, what type of setup do you want? Oftentimes, we have the renters do a pre-visit, do a walkthrough of this. We just did it today. They'll walk through the school, they'll take a look at what the spaces, what they look like, and then they'll see if they need any additional tables, chairs, or whatever kind of setup.
Gotcha. But there's no fee associated with that at this time. And if they want more, they have to go rent it and bring it in?
No, currently, if it's just a few chairs and tables, that's that setup and clean fee that you see there.
Right.
If it's, let's say they want 10 chairs and 12 and 5 tables, what I'm told is it's not a big deal. If it gets up to say 50 chairs, and I think that one group that came in this summer, it was a Democratic group, they needed 300 chairs. That took a lot of setup for the chairs and the tables. They got charged for the extra. But what I'm told is, as they're applying and she's going through the application, if it's reasonable and it can be done quickly, we don't charge them for it. So,
And we are getting into the weeds, but
We are.
since we are,
yep.
I love being in the weeds. I live in the weeds.
we also, when the request comes in, it's reviewed at the school level by our head custodians. And they look at, okay, this is how many chairs are requested, this is how many we have. Hey, if we're gonna do this, we've gotta talk to other schools, I'll coordinate to get the chairs there. That's an example, so that takes more time. So we communicate back to the rentor before we make it an official rental to make sure that that is covered.
Gotcha.
But if you are asking about breaking down every table, every chair, we don't do that. I
Okay.
don't know other groups that do, but I mean, if that was something that the board wanted to look at, we could.
I don't think so at this time. I think this is more just like a fact-finding
Yeah.
mission, which is to say, what do we actually do versus what are we writing in this policy?
Right.
So
Right.
by asking the question, we can say, okay, we don't go that far. We don't need a separate definition of equipment rental because for whatever is reasonable, it's
Right.
included as the facility rental fee. And then anything extra, that was one of my questions, in B7, it mentions the certificate of like the superintendent or their designee may waive or reduce rental fees for good cause consistent with the intent of this policy. The certificate of liability, custodial fees, damage fees, and extra setup charges shall not be waived. So that's the first
That
and
is
only
correct.
time that's mentioned, and I think that's what we're getting at. I think,
Extra setup.
which is just if they need something that is beyond what we consider reasonable in
Right.
terms of time and effort, that we're gonna go back to them and say, we need to charge you extra.
And we definitely do, so.
Okay,
Do we want to put that as one of the,
well, it's assessed, I guess, as needed, or,
Setup
extra
and clean.
setup charge as needed? I don't know.
I had put excessive in parentheses, but I think that deserves a definition, so I took it out.
yeah, I mean, we can throw it in the
I mean, does it
definitions.
matter? I don't know, if I was a renter and all of a sudden someone came back and was like, you need to pay more fee, I might, I
You
was
would-
renting, but maybe people who rent don't care, so I don't care.
Well, you would know before you locked onto the agreement. You would know that it would be extra setup. That extra setup could be the amount of people, or it could be the length of the actual event. It could be a 10-hour event, so we might need 4 custodians to have 2 on for 5 hours, or 2 on for 8 hours, and 2 on for 3 hours. You have to really look at what's coming in for the request for the rental space and what's needed. And then we internally figure that out and we communicate back. But again, we really take great efforts to, if someone's gonna rent the facility and it's a good size event, we really encourage them, and they all do, come in and they check out do a drive run, they get a look at the facility, they see how, we will inquire, how do you want it set up? We'll ask them how to set it up. Our website, our scheduling software actually has pictures of every single one of these to further assist the rentor on what the spaces look like. We have the seating capacities, all of that information. So I think we've come a real long way from the way we used to do it, but we do go through a pretty intensive process to make sure that the people renting know what they're getting and agree to the charge before we sign them up.
So I have in my notes, in my mind, the custodial fee and the setup fee were one and the same, but it's actually broken out. So there's the setup fee
Correct.
and the custodial fee.
It's typically the custodians that are doing the setup fee,
Right.
so.
So, but they're broken out separately in the facility use fees, so they're not one and the same, right?
Correct.
Right, so, again, the event would dictate the type of event. If they're just renting the space and there's no setup, then obviously there's no setup. But if they need the chairs removed, then put back in, we have to charge for that.
Okay. I'm just thinking about, in creating a definition section for this policy, we should have a definition of a custodial, everything that's in your fee schedule, we should have a definition for.
That makes sense.
And I think that we can easily create a definition for a setup cleanup fee that also includes language that extra fees will be assessed for requests that are beyond the normal bounds of, an average setup and breakdown, however you want to say it.
Yeah. I guess I'm thinking about, I'm going to I'm renting your cafeteria, but, oh, by the way, I'm making pancakes and breakfast and I'm using all the kitchen stuff and your trays.
So
That would be an additional, I would expect that to be additional and require some additional items on that.
And further on in this policy,
Yep.
it speaks to if you're using kitchen, your request is to use the kitchen or kitchen equipment. Oftentimes, we'll have our own food service folks work that, and the agreement covers their fee
Okay.
to work that event.
Right. So D5, cafeteria and kitchen equipment may only be used under the direction of school employees connected with the usual operation of such equipment.
Okay.
Right.
So that's there.
Good. And then, say I'm renting the auditorium. What about the sound system? Do we require that our trained person be using the sound system? And do we charge for that? I would think.
I would think so.
We-
I wouldn't let somebody just come in and start plugging in.
No, we don't. It's too
Okay.
expensive and sophisticated. We
Yeah,
don't.
risky.
Chance you could really mess
All the
things
way
up.
Right.
around with
Right.
cyber and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But no, also, in this policy, you have protections against that. So if there's damage, there's obviously the liability insurance, and that's not to be waived under any circumstance, so you're covered there. But you're also covered in the policy with damage to the building, to equipment, to anything in the school.
Yeah, and the certificate of liability, we didn't put the amount in, but, because if we change it, then we have to come back to the board, but, normally, the Concord School District is named as an additional insured, and it's $1 million. And that costs a group about $250 to $300 for the entire year, but that's what we require, and that's consistent with the other school districts I looked at.
I think that's fine, not to name the amount. That's part of the discussion of the rental, right?
But I wanna go back to something Liz just casually mentioned, and that is somebody plugs into our network. The liability of cyber security could be huge.
Yeah.
Do we allow people to do that?
We-
And is
we-
there anything preventing them from just coming in and doing that? If they're in a classroom or in a,
Well, so Jack also oversees the IT department, and he and myself and Glenna, we talk this over a lot. So if there's a request to use our internet, that goes through, and I'd let him speak to more of the technical cyber protections that we have, but they are there. But I would
Firewall.
definitely, right, but I would definitely, for more specificity on that, I'll ask him the question and have him explain that out, but I know that that is covered.
Okay. All right, well, we haven't made it past the definition section. How we doing, guys? I think that I have enough notes to modify this section for the next time we meet. I know on the one time, I really wish Barb was here. I'm sure she will have opinions on this particular policy, so I want to make sure that her voice is heard as well. So we'll definitely revisit this at the next meeting. As far as the rest of the policy, I would say I just, groups B and C worry me a little bit. I want to make sure that what we're doing and then what the policy states is lined up. I don't think civic group covers it.
No.
So let's spend some time thinking about that. The rental process, I think is fine. It says that all applications for use of the Concord School District facilities must be made in writing on the rental form found at, and it's a website.
Right.
I would probably say submit it online, unless you also have a paper form that someone can.
And if they don't own a computer or whatever else, then all they have to do is call the facilitator and she will help them
Okay.
input the information, because we wanted to be sure we could meet that need if necessary.
Right, so the facilitator would then put it through the portal.
It
Correct.
goes,
On
right,
someone's behalf.
we have that
Facilities person,
portal
yeah.
managed for scheduling and.
Before, Kara, one thing, before we move on to definitions, because I had a couple notes here. I know later on you talked about wanting to define, I think it was do with weapons and stuff like that. You wanted to define student. And my recommendation there was, if you define student, we go with, I went back and I couldn't find, because you all haven't voted on it yet. We stay consistent with the definition we used in restraint and seclusion, but we use child. But it still covers up till 22. So just food for thought on that one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, really, my question was, I think if we're going to talk about weapons on a school campus,
Yep.
what is our current policy? Are we talking about, I mean, children shouldn't be possessing firearms
It's prohibited by our.
regardless.
Right. It's prohibited under our policies now. Adults, this is where you're getting into state and federal. We had this happen at that one.
The GOP.
GOP. You know, we say to adults, we don't want you to bring weapons on board, but we can't prohibit them under the Second Amendment right now. So what we say to them and what happened in that case is when a student saw what they thought was a weapon, the person was asked to take it out and put it in their car, which they complied with right away. So we want to put that out in advance and say, obviously, our policy 711, I think it is on the back, I referenced it, makes it clear that kids certainly can't, but adults right now,
Right. So we have students that are over 18 and over. So they are
That's true.
legal adults. They
True.
can legally possess a firearm.
yep,
If they are a student of the district, even if they are at a non-school event, are they covered under our weapons policy as it pertains to students, or are they now citizens who are,
that's a great question. I would argue they're still students. That's why they're tied to us.
That's what I would argue too.
Yeah.
It's
So that's-
still students of the Concord School District.
Correct.
yes.
If they want to
Till
be
22.
18 and they want to go to some other school that might not specify, then I
Go
think
ahead.
that's,
Yeah.
I think that's a different.
Yeah, which is why I highlighted this sentence, because I do think it needs to be more explicit. And why the question was, should we define student, which is essentially, regardless of age, somebody who is a student of the
Concord
Concord,
student,
yeah, enrolled in the Concord School District. Therefore, it takes out the ambiguity of the age
Yes.
issue.
But then you're
Let
gonna
me-
hate me on this, but what about homeschool kids or kids we have out of district, but we're still responsible for them? That's in trying to define student. I guess
get-
responsibility of the district?
I'm
or-
getting simpler than that. I'm not a member of the Concord School District, but I come to CRTC.
Right,
I'm a member of the Bode School District, so am I allowed to bring firearms? Yeah, no.
No.
So we need to make sure the definition is inclusive of that.
yeah,
Right.
in attendance. We
Any
used the
child,
definition
any
somewhere.
student,
Any student,
Any student.
a student of life. So no one.
Franklin Pierce, you know, who's a student, yes.
I don't know, I'm throwing things out there.
No, and I mean, this is why I wanted to bring it up, because I feel like this is gonna be a hot
Yep.
button if and when it comes up. We want to be able to point to the policy as something that's clear as far as what our expectations are for students and how it may or may not differ from what we expect of adults, because we are, prevented from enforcing that
What
policy.
does our student weapon, what is our weapons policy?
Where's your big binder?
Going
Where's your
back to
policy
the
Right.
binder?
right, 'cause I rode my
Yeah, it's-
bike and I was like, will I need
Do you wanna
it?
know what it is or what it says?
I was just wondering what that says to be consistent with the language of,
Oh, okay. I can tell you the weapons policy number itself is 544. But any kind of gun is supposed
Right,
to
but
be
our
grounds for
weapons
potential
policy actually, so, because this specifically says firearms, but our weapons policy actually brings up things like billy clubs
well,
and,
my suggestion was going.
fisticuffs.
My, yeah, well,
Nice.
exactly. My suggestion was through the Hampton district. They just said weapons are not permitted on school property. But we could do something which, along the lines of firearms and weapons, including but not limited to. And list those are not permitted on school property.
Yep.
We don't specify adult or child. We are saying they're not permitted. Doesn't mean it can be enforced, no.
No, but if we see it, we can then say the adult and hopefully, and then if they don't wanna get rid of it, then further on our policy, an adult in charge, I forget what we call it.
Because
the
then we
official.
follow the law.
Right.
We're just saying we don't permit them
Right.
based on what we're recommending as a resolution. And then if they're seen and it's a student, then we follow the law there. If we see an adult, we
Yeah.
can report it to the police, whether it's enforced
Right.
or not. I don't think we have to say student or adult in this. We are
Okay.
just not permitting weapons and firearms in the school
Okay.
or on school property.
so let me ask the question, Karen.
Yeah.
If we have a a policy sentence that states in our rental policy, weapons and firearms are not permitted on school property, period. We know that it's unenforceable. Is it in some way illegal for us to even draft that and
No,
pass it?
no,
All
because
right.
what we're gonna simply do is what we did and say to the adult, could you please take that weapon? You're not supposed to have it on school property.
Exactly.
And if they say, well, it's my right, that's fine. We'd like you to now leave our event. So we can do that.
We're
We're not in
requesting-
violation of their constitutional rights, but we're just saying up front.
All right.
And if we put it in the rental form stuff, they're on notice,
Yeah.
so.
All right. Is everyone comfortable with that? I am. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Liz. All right, jumping back. We're no longer needing to define student because we don't need to. We are back at the rental process, which is that they need to do it online or they need to receive assistance. It does say that it needs to be done at least 21 days prior to the date.
Correct.
Are there exceptions to that rule? And are those exceptions allowed on a regular basis? In which case, do we need this number of days?
I asked Glenna about that, and she said 21 days gives her enough time to do a lot of the background stuff she needs to do, because it takes time to chase them to get their certificates of liability, their 501c3 status, or whatever it is. So she wanted the 21 days. To be
Okay.
honest, if there's an emergency situation, I'm sure that we could waive it. We just
Okay.
didn't want the exceptions to swallow the rule.
Yep, for sure.
Is there any collective bargaining agreements that require advance notice to have a custodian work or something that night? Are we limited in any ways by that?
Jim.
Contracts. Let's pull the contracts.
No, I'm just saying,
More
we can't make
weeks.
a rule that's in violation
That was
of
good. I
collective
didn't think
bargaining
of that one. It
agreement.
was good.
Right.
It's something I have to think about,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so.
You schedule them all the
No,
time on
we,
short notice.
yeah,
Okay.
we do.
Okay, if it's not included, that's great. I
Right.
just wanted to make sure that we're, whatever we do in a policy, we can't violate a collective bargaining agreement.
Correct. Correct.
Thank you.
But we wouldn't be.
Okay,
That
I
does.
just thought I'd ask.
Here's just a question though. If you have an event that gets scheduled on a weekend, what if can you ask the custodian? The custodian says no. I
Yeah,
can't do it."
and that does happen.
So what if you have no custodian? You
Well,
just
then,
can't rent it.
so if we don't have any custodian in the school, we open it up to the rest of the 37 custodians in the district. And
Okay.
we
So they
have
get
never,
priority in
I'll
the
knock on wood, we've never had an issue getting coverage.
Because it's time and a half.
I was
or
gonna
double
say,
time.
that it was
you-
incentive enough. to-
Correct. You offer within the school, but if you exhaust that and everyone has plans, then we open it to the rest of the district.
Okay.
And we've never had an issue getting help.
Okay. So you're good with 21 days, and is everybody okay with not necessarily writing out that can be waived, or should we?
And do you want to make it business calendar? Are you?
That's up to.
That's, how long does
Glenna.
it take? Does
Yeah.
it take her 21 business days or calendar
Yeah,
days to check
exactly.
all that
That'd
stuff?
I think it was like a 3-week thing,
Okay.
so they
So
were taking
calendar
calendar
days.
days.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Number 3 in that section, I had read it already, but I'll bring it up again. School-sponsored activities have priority for all facilities. Second, shall be official activities of the city of Concord. And third, those activities serving the youth of the community. All other requests shall be based on availability.
Right.
My immediate thought before we started this discussion was like, well, if you've got a pool of applications in, are you setting those priorities? But it actually sounds like almost that there's a chronology to it, that the school really has first rights to the
Always.
schedule,
Yeah.
Always.
and before it's even released
Correct.
to the city.
To the city.
And then the
once
city has access to it before anyone else does.
That is correct.
And then it's open. And so really it's that final push where you may have more than one applicant who you have to decide gets to have that spot.
And I asked Glenn about that exact question, and she said, historically what has happened is if she had a conflict, she would find another location within our district, other building to use.
Gotcha.
And we've done that.
Okay.
Or if two groups want we get to that last stage. Two groups want the gymnasium at the high school. If we can't work it out that they use another, that they agree to use another, then we also suggest, well, this following date is open, or this date previous. So we've really been able to, luckily, with the space that we have, we've been able to resolve any conflicts.
Awesome.
But there would be not a case where we'd have something rented to, somewhere where we already agreed that, my dance club is going to be in there, and all of a sudden, we're in the gym, and all of a sudden, we make the playoffs.
Do they get bumped?
Do they get bumped? Can we bump them? Is there a provision in our contracts that allow that?
Well, so let's walk through that scenario. If that happened, we would go, as soon as we found that out, would go to the person renting and would explain the scenario. I think we've had one or two occasions where that has happened in the past, and we've been able to work it out with having an alternate school space.
Okay. I'm just
or an
questioning
alternate
because
date.
I've paid and printed posters that say
Right.
it's at the
Right.
the CHS gym. Now all of a sudden I'm at the, Runlet Middle School gym,
Right.
and I say, no, I don't wanna do that. I've already paid all this money into advertising and stuff. I just wanted to know if there was a provision and it's getting into the weeds and we don't have to do that, but I'm bringing it up as to if we have that ability.
We do. We really haven't had that happen often. We have had it happen.
Yeah.
And we
Well,
early.
hopefully we make the playoffs more often.
Right. Hopefully this becomes a problem. Oh my
But
god.
we communicate, we're very, we directly communicate, and we are able, luckily, because we have some swing space, we're able to offer a reasonable
Okay.
solution.
I will say your level of customer service is commendable, right? It sounds like you really work with every person or organization that wants to use our facilities, which is amazing. As long as the policy is backing you up, that's what I'm comfortable with. Because someday you may retire, please don't. Or, whoever our excellent facilities rental coordinator is, leaves, and then we get somebody who's not so customer service friendly. I want to make sure the policy has the bones to back them up. So I like that we have, now that you've explained it to me, I like that we have this statement of priority so that if you need to approach a renter about why they're being bumped, the policy states, we are prioritizing
Right.
these activities, and we will find other things for you to do, places for you to rent.
In item 5 is 24 hours notice. Is there ever any conditions where we would have invested money and prepared a facility more than 24 hours in advance, and would we charge them for it?
I mean, generally speaking, we're busy during the week, with school for the school year. I can't think of one off the top of my head where we've had a
It's okay, I just
situation
asked the
like that, but
Then, okay, fine, then I'm good.
There's a lot here about inclement weather.
Yep. And I did look at the other policies on that, because I was like 24 hours, but they're gonna know as soon as hopefully they're checking the internet, they're checking the radio, and if, obviously, if school's canceled, we're closed. So,
But, I mean, it sort of suggests that a renter will not be notified by the district if school is canceled for inclement weather. The superintendent is going to call it, and they're
Right.
just going to have to figure it out.
right,
Yeah.
they're gonna have
Right.
to check to see if the school's closed. And if so, we can reschedule, refund the fee, or whatever we need to do to make them whole.
Okay.
Do we need to write, should watch local television, check
Yep.
district? We have to write that? Or do we just say if it's canceled due to inclement weather? I'm just talking about wordiness. I don't think it really
Yeah.
is that serious.
I mean, it's a good suggestion, and maybe could just be part of the rental process and not necessarily part of a policy. It is the policy of the district that a renter check their local television station. Maybe we don't need that, but.
Right.
Okay.
again, we've had situations where we've had stuff scheduled, the weather comes in, it's advertised, people know, they'll call. So we communicate with them. It might be initiated by them. It might be them watching, or social media. But they've
But-
gotten that message.
But I agree, that may not need to be in the policy, it could be in the
Like we can do any of that.
Right.
contract or rules or guidelines, whatever you want to put it.
I also agree with the comment about sponsoring organization. Change it to replace it.
Right.
Renter.
I'm gonna guess that this language was borrowed from somewhere else.
Which one, I'm sorry?
Just the
Number
term
5.
sponsoring organization.
Yes,
Yeah.
it
so,
is.
Yeah.
Yep,
So from
yep,
here
yep, yep.
forward, that term pops up. But I think basically from the moment we start talking about the rental process, I would just love to call every single
Renter.
entity, organization, person the renter.
Yep, okay.
That way, it doesn't matter who they are, what they are. We know that they are attempting to rent our facility. The only for D4, sorry, I think we're all just kind of reading through at this point. We have except for handicapped individuals with a legal placard.
Yep.
Just for person first language, for individuals with disabilities that have a legal placard or a legal handicap placard would work as well,
Okay,
except for individuals with a legal handicap placard.
got it.
I'm not trying to out anybody, but we definitely had an outdoor cooking grill at Abbott Downing the other day for a fun little celebration.
How far away from the building was it?
Don't
How
answer
far
that
does it
question,
need to be
Cara.
to make
Don't
this
answer.
How
conversation?
far was it? How far was it? How far away?
It was 25 feet or more.
I don't know, you could look at the picture
Okay.
that was posted on.
Yeah.
25 feet or more.
It wasn't you guys that made me put this in here.
We're the
I'll tell
ones
you
that we deliver the
somebody
grill.
else.
Okay,
'cause it's
okay, good.
It's so. I was just playing.
I was like, I don't know. How
I
many?
have my fireman hat.
Okay,
on,
good.
that's all.
All right, and then we're into security. Guys, we're almost done. We're doing great. We're into the security piece. This part, I definitely want to have a quick combo about because we've been talking about crowd control
Yep.
conversationally lately. So I think this is where this is coming from. So I really want to make sure we're explicit about who needs to be trained and in what in order to be considered a trained adult when managing crowds.
Can I answer this?
Yeah.
So, the NFPA, National Fire Protection Code, has wording in their language that you need to have crowd manager training. So, when you have 250 or more and then increments of 250 or more, you need one person who is crowd manager certified. Certification used to be held by the local fire department, but they are not necessarily doing that anymore, but there is a website that's endorsed by the fire NFPA, and it's crowd manager training. So it's $19.99 fee. You watch a video. The video lasts, I don't know, 40 minutes, 45 minutes. I've taken it, and I got my certification. A lot of administrators, our goal is over there, just explaining the whole thing. Our goal is to have all administrative staff at each school take this training and get that certification so that if there's a school dance or there's any kind of a school activity, we have someone or people that are trained in this so that in an event, a catastrophic event where evacuation is required, someone can calmly show safe egress out of the building. So, I mean, I can go more in depth, but it's good language to have in there, and it is something that the NFPA requires in their code.
Okay.
And we're asking that it be within the organization itself, that they do the
Right.
training of their person, not us.
Right, that's what I'm saying, and this is why I bring it up because
Yeah, that's it.
we need to let them know what trained means.
Yep.
Correct.
So
Put that
a renter
sign in
needs to know that we don't consider a person a trained adult until they have received this NFPA online certification.
Correct. And you have to physically, you watch the video and you take a test. You pass a test and then you're immediately sent.
This is for, you need one for up to 250 people. So if there's
And
10 people, you
250
need one. If there's 250, you need one.
Right.
So every member of the PTO's administrators probably needs to get certified.
So it's just the
So
administrators
I'm
of the
working
group.
with, well, I'm working with the principals to have their administrative staff and our custodians trained in it. But let's remember, if you have a big event and an outside group, a renter is paying for custodial support to clean the building, supply, and do all of that, they can't fill the role of crowd manager. So we are saying in here that the renter needs to take that training and provide the certificate for the amount of people that they have.
So if the city wants to use the school,
Oftentimes, we have the fire department help out, and it being with the city, the firefighters are trained in crowd manager. I mean, they're the ones that initially held the
So,
training.
so if the PTA has a movie night, and the custodian is doing the custodial stuff.
You should have, so we are working in the summer as a goal, and I think Superintendent might have mentioned this. We have sent out this for everyone over the summer to complete the program, get the certificate at the schools, so that you have a PTO meeting or an event, and then your principal, your assistant principal, and other staff there have that certificate. So
So they would
it's
have to
it's a
attend.
safety.
they would have to attend, but
They would have
if
to.
we have no administrators or no teachers attending, like most happens at Chris McCullough, for example,
Well, it would be, at least
that-
when I was there,
well, at least Beaver Meadow has staff on the PTO,
they
right?
do
Same-
at this time.
Same with Abbott
Will you just
Downing.
pull your microphone a little closer?
Same
Just-
with Abbott Downing at this time.
Yeah.
That Both
this time.
those schools do at this time. CMS does not. And if there's no staff at that event, then it's the custodians that are typically there. Not always do they do setup. It's a low lift, but they are still there.
Right.
Who will help be picking up at the end. You know, we
Right.
break down tables with them. We help them put it away. Would they count, or we would still need one of the PTO members
So
to be there?
How many people would be at that?
Could be if it's the glow dance. It could be up to close to 250 people.
Okay, so
If not
no,
more.
no principal or administrative staff?
Not typically.
Okay, well then we would ask them to be there with that training. Our goal is to have them trained over the summer.
And have them be there. Like someone would have to
Trained and
attend.
present. I think the
Yeah.
expectation
think
is
that
being
that would
set
be
and
Correct.
modified at this time.
Okay.
And is separate from the renters. So we have like a staffing issue for our own school events, because we're gonna need, this applies to us for our own school events, but then for renters, in the outside world, they also need to have a certified individual.
Correct,
Right.
Like the Boys and Girls Club or the YMCA.
correct. Or any outside group renting the
Churches.
facility that has more than, correct, churches.
Is it do you know if the certification 1999 is for per year?
No,
Or is it just a flat fee?
Liz pulled it up.
Yeah.
I
It doesn't tell
believe-
you on this
Yeah,
website.
I don't
Like,
think there's an expiration date.
it doesn't specify that. It just says 1995. It's a way to make money.
Sure.
I mean, the crux of the matter is, it is someone who's trained. So if there's a catastrophic event where you need to evacuate a fire in the building, someone can take charge and say, use this exit, the fire's down here, don't go down this way. It's a safety precautionary. It does make a lot of sense. I do agree with it.
Well, it's cheaper than the employee fee. You either pay the $19.95 for the one person or $50 per hour for the employee to be there.
Well, but we're also
it's
saying they
insurance,
have
so-
to be there.
Yeah.
We're also saying whenever a civic group or organization is permitted to use school property for an event, at least one district employee must be on hand paid for by the organization, when in the opinion of the superintendent, it is necessary to supervise the individuals and protect school property. So from my perspective, that clause is defining a separate person, a supervisory person, who is not necessarily the trained crowd manager.
Kathleen felt that covered the custodian. And if she needed somebody more, that's why we left in the fee for the employee fee. But she was thinking in most instances, that is now that I'm seeing the language, protect school property, basically the custodians are gonna be best served to know how to get people out of the building quickly. But if she feels, based on the numbers, that somebody else needs to be there in addition to that,
Can we add then, if a custodian is not present? Because what this suggests to me is that we've got the custodian, we've got the crowd control manager, and then we've got the paid district employee who needs to be physically on site.
okay.
And then additionally, in the previous paragraph, a designated door for entry and egress must be manned by a member of the sponsoring group, the renter, throughout the event, and the door shall not be propped open at any time. If that's not the crowd manager, now we're talking about potentially 4 separate people. So to avoid ambiguity, I think we need to say, if the custodian can be all these things, then
The only recommendation is the custodian, so it's a high school event in the gym. The custodians are there, but they're also cleaning the other parts of the school. Fire breaks out, it's a lot to put on the custodian who's on the 3rd floor to run all the way down and try to do that. So they're trying to really separate. If you're hiring a custodian for cleanup or setup and securing and unsecuring the building to let people in, you need a dedicated person if in the event something happened, that they are there at the event, that they could safely guide people out safely.
I think that's the safest route. It should not be the custodian then.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay.
right.
And that can
Well,
be your
right.
person
You don't
manning the
wanna
door
combine
too,
that.
if you needed.
It
well,
could
and
be.
so you had said that number 4 about the person needing to be physically on hand to supervise covers the custodian, but it sounds like we're actually talking about somebody not the custodian, in addition to the custodian.
I lost you on the last part, I'm sorry.
Well, because I had said the language, at least one district employee must be on hand, paid for by the organization, when in the opinion of the superintendent is necessary to supervise the individuals and protect school property. And you had just mentioned she had wanted this because it covers the custodian. Do you mean like covers as in like the custodian can go do what they need to do because we've got somebody else on site?
No, I wish I meant that. I didn't. I meant, we thought the custodian could be both, but the way it's worded here, I understand the concern, and I agree with Matt, that custodian's gonna be off doing their duties.
Right.
I think the person who's watching the door, those kinds of things, or whatever they're doing, is also gonna be potentially your crowd control person. So instead of 4, you could be looking at 2 people.
Provided the door is right there.
Right, because can we?
Because
like-
if there's
Yeah.
if there's a fire in this room and I'm at the door at the top of the stairs and there's a
Right.
bunch of people in here, they're running that way.
You're not gonna know.
I'm not coming down
Yeah. Right.
because I'm running against the group, and anybody here is without crowd control, and that is a problem.
And can I ask
It's a
why
situational
do we
issue.
need someone manned at a door throughout the entire event? Because there are multiple doors.
There should only be one for
That's-
ingress and egress, though.
that's
So we can,
access.
so yeah, in and out, so that we, and also so we can watch who's coming in. Do you know what I mean?
Do you
So
mean an external door?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A door
Yeah.
to the outside?
Yes.
So, like for instance, Abbott Downing talent show the other night, everybody's coming in one door,
Yep.
Right.
but every other exit door was available to us when we were ready to leave and go to our cars for the night. So we all just went out separate entrances.
You went out separate entrances, but you couldn't come in those entrances or those other doors because they were locked.
Right. So it's only for entry.
Right, and the whole, let's not lose sight of, the whole crowd manager is for during the event. If you need to evacuate, someone there is trained and also can communicate and help move the crowd out safely.
Right. And I'm with you on this. I
Okay.
just would like clarity because, especially with smaller events, I'm thinking about that we need a custodian, we need a person who's dedicated to crowd control, we need a person who's just standing at the door for the whole event. I don't know of a parent volunteer that wants to miss out on the talent show because they have
Right.
to stand at the door the whole time.
Can
But
we
you
lock
have
the doors
discretion of-
automatically
We do.
after 15 minutes? But
Yeah.
what if a parent's late and can't get in?
They
Well,
ring the
there's cell
doorbell.
phones, there's,
Cell
Yeah.
phones,
Okay.
they ring the doorbell.
Okay.
So I'm pushing back against the language in 3 is what I'm getting at,
3.
which is that I just don't know if it's feasible that we have someone manning a door.
I agree with you, but I do think we should need a line that says you shall not keep doors propped open.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's more
that
important.
yeah.
Or yeah, unlocked. Because I'm thinking that if you're, and I'll go back to Beaver Meadow, if you're coming in the main door.
Correct,
But the event will be downstairs and in the gym.
right.
Those doors are not typically open, they're closed or allowed, and, people will go back out through the main door. But if you have,
But if we had
if
the
the main door
egress,
is open and everybody's down in the gym, now you've got free reign of the school.
Yeah. Well, and that's
So
one of
you
the
have to
problems,
lock
So you
is we
do
don't want
wanna-
everybody
right.
to have free reign of
Right.
the school. They should stay in the areas they're renting.
last night, so case in point, we put Millbrook, we put the doors under an unlock before the event. And then once the event got started, they went automatically into a lock position. We have that software at all of our schools.
So
And
you
we
could
use
set
it.
it for like 15, 20 minutes?
Absolutely, 3 minutes if you wanted.
Wow.
And so your
So-
recommendation would be that somebody be there when the door is unlocked, just for,
Well, it's good practice.
Security
You
purposes?
wanna, yeah, I mean,
Check out who's coming in. Do they look like they have
people,
Well, we
weapons
do,
or-
we do that at our PTO events
Yeah.
because we specifically say in the invitation, child must come accompanied with a parent. We've had situations where parents just drop off, so
Yeah.
now we make sure every child coming in the door, their parent, someone is and a guardian's with them.
okay. So I think I'm good with that. I think we just need to write it. I think we need to state it, because I'm just thinking about the number of people needed in
Right.
order for these functions, even small functions, to be carried out, and it's starting to sound a little
it's
cumbersome.
cumbersome if you
Yeah.
read it that way, but I
Yeah.
think it should be tweaked. Yep.
All right.
And this does say one district employee.
Or more, yeah. If necessary. And then the expense, at the expense of the renter, so do we need to add that fee, or is it that I'm seeing a $50 fee for kind of like all the things? Would you assume that extra fee for more supervisory hands on deck would be $50?
Depending on the size of the event, yes. Absolutely.
Okay. So we should probably list that. Or I guess it would fall under employee fee. It would just be additional
It
employees.
would be, right.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, I think we can tweak this a little bit just to make sure it's clear how many people need to be physically in the building,
Right.
watching doors, standing at doors, or just taking charge when things go south, if things go south.
Okay.
I would like to think about if the NFPA online certification is the only recommended training, or if there are other options. I mean, just because we're asking people to spend money. So I just want to make sure we're doing our due diligence in terms of what's available.
Is there a
You
free
could
program
talk to the
certification?
local fire marshal, who I probably talk to on average once or twice a week. They're great to work with, and they have to point us in the direction of this particular website that Liz has opened up, because they've got so many other things to do. They can't hold that training.
Right.
However,
they're-
I'm sorry.
No.
I was gonna say there's if you have a coupon code, I don't know what the
Yeah,
discount
where do we
is.
get the
Coupon.
If maybe this organization, the training organization would provide it to the district, and then we could provide that coupon code to staff, because it's such a large entity.
Right.
Yeah, and we're a school district, which is different
Right.
than you know,
Concert
The
hall or
garage.
something like that.
Right.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's one way to lower the cost.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
also, Jerry, while we were talking, I just emailed their support to ask about if this was a one-time fee. It's
Okay.
not very clear on here.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
And another question would be, is there the possibility of a train the trainer situation? Like if
Yeah.
you are,
Good trained, right?
yeah, like you're
Sure.
very well trained, you're certified,
No, because you get a special code
certificate.
that's to your name,
that's to your ID.
and then you would redo it if you need to, I guess.
Is that like
if
sort of like sitting in an exit row where you like take on responsibility of an emergency should it occur?
Yeah.
Like,
Because
if-
they ask you.
right, because
Right.
if I'm a crowd manager and I take this online course and then the fire alarm goes off and I just choose to walk out of the building because I am scared, what are, you know, I just want to make sure what we're asking of people.
But also, how does the district know? Is the district taking copies of the person?
Right. It's a good question.
Well, when
Well, we
they,
should require it probably.
as part of their rental form.
Yep,
No, I think we're
per the
saying the
policy,
same thing.
Mm-hmm.
because we ask for a certificate of liability, and if we have over
Right.
250 people, we say, please produce your certificate.
And
Right.
will that person even be in attendance?
Right, well, that,
Right.
I mean, per the policy, they should,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
all of these things,
yeah,
we have to assume that
Right.
they've
At least we're
signed a
going
contract,
through-
they're adhering to the policy, and if they don't
Right.
and something happens,
we've at least tried. We've
That's on
done
them.
due diligence.
None of this was in the policy before, so it's good that we're even putting it in there.
This
We're-
is-
We're,
yeah, we
we're
were-
hoping that
Yeah. More
people
meat
are
on the
telling
bone.
the truth, you know?
right. I think, I mean, people are well-intentioned for the most part.
Yeah.
The groups that we're working with certainly understand liability when it comes to exposing children to
Right.
risk. So I don't think it's going to be that much of an issue. It's just that this is something new. This is something that's new to even us in the district.
Right.
So asking people to spend money to get certified, I just want to make sure we're asking all the questions.
Yeah.
Can we get it for free? Can we get it at a discount? Can we do a train the trainer? What are our options for group trainings?
Right, because this is gonna cost us as a district.
Right,
to get-
right. This is a budget line item for
Right.
sure. Hopefully, we're not doing it $20 a pop.
Well, and if it's not a lifelong.
Right, if it's annual.
It's annual, so.
Right.
Excellent. All right. Does anybody want to push back against any prohibited conduct? Would you like to allow people to impede, delay, disrupt, or otherwise interfere with any school function?
If
or
I vape, is it still covered under smoke and tobacco?
smoke, otherwise use tobacco.
If I vape, I'm not using tobacco necessarily.
Vape is tobacco.
It's an entry, well, no, it's
Oh,
nicotine,
our-
it's not tobacco.
Our,
But it
our
could be an illegal
signage-
drug or controlled substance under F.
And our,
Yeah.
our signage on the schools say
Okay.
they cover e-cigarettes, I think is the language they use.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
then
I'm
that's
fine with all of
That's okay
these.
then.
Yes. Weapons, I think we settled on that. We can always revisit it when we see the next round. I had just deleted the last two recommendations because it seemed redundant. And then the last one is enforcement, which is that anybody can be asked to leave by authorized personnel. I just wanted to bring up, this might be the first time we've mentioned the term authorized personnel.
Yeah, and that came from the go-by, the New Hampshire School Board, but their definition is pretty complicated. They define an authorized district personnel as any person designated by the superintendent, the principal, as to grounds or activities within his or her purview. The athletic director or any other person or persons so designated by either of them to administer the provisions of this policy relative to specific school property or school-sponsored or approved activity or function. So,
What about citizen's arrest? Is that in there?
we thought maybe we could
Like,
say just a
I'm
school.
authorized. Get
yeah,
outta
Concord
here.
school employee.
Yeah?
Authorize. So if I'm going to impede and delay or disrupt,
A basketball game, that happened. Yep,
well,
yep,
anything,
Yep.
because my group is protesting, as has been so popular this past spring.
yep.
Does any school employee have the authority to have me arrested?
You have the authority to contact law enforcement.
Okay,
Yes.
but,
Yes.
so they're going to have me arrested. I just want to make sure we're leaving that decision in the hands of the
police, not
appropriate
us.
person.
We're just gonna
Right.
call and say, you may wanna come
Well,
down here.
that's- The police are the ones who have arrested everybody on every college campus at the direction of the
The authorized personnel.
person.
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure we're comfortable
Yep,
with that.
yeah, we're just
Okay.
gonna say, call, if they feel that
Okay.
there's a threat, call the police.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in the references, can we
practice.
just cite what the school board policy number is as well for this?
What, I'm sorry, Liz?
Like we did in the last policy, the restraint and seclusion, we cited with the school board.
The other policies that pertain?
No, the numbered policies. I mean, the lettered
The lettered, I
policies.
think she means the
Oh.
letters.
School Board
Sorry,
Association.
I see. Well, we
I
can, we
letter.
can, yeah, we can do the letter
I know
for
what
New
you-
Hampshire School Board? Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Just
The
so
school board
if we
association.
start revising policies and we put that under it.
Yep.
And if
You
we
got
all of a
it.
sudden decide we want to switch later down the road, we already have done the work along the way.
Got it. No problem.
All right. I'm happy. I think this is coming together really well.
Say good work.
Karen, I'm happy to work on the notes that we just discussed and send them to you for additional
Perfect.
zhuzhing, lawyering, as it were. And then we can have it ready for what I would call sort of our second draft the next time we meet.
Got it.
And then we'll make sure Barb has it so that she has plenty of time to review it, because she's going to be seeing all of this sort of for the first time, and add her questions, and then we're good to go.
Alrighty.
Chairwoman, is there another policy that we need to be looking at for our homework?
For homework, well, we've got a couple of things coming down the pike. We're going to have our joint meeting with instructional in July regarding class sizes. But I believe the district will be coming to us with research on best practices and theory around class sizes. So unless you want to deep dive on that before we get the presentation, just know that it's coming. The financials that we've been discussing, the 300s,
Yep.
are soon to be
There-
ready.
There's 11 of them ready.
They're ready for us, but Pam has asked that they be seen by finance first.
Right.
So I'm fine with them hitting our committee folder for us to just sort of review in our own time, with
Okay.
the understanding that finance might have a whack at it before it actually comes to the public committee meeting.
And then you have 553, which is prohibits prohibitions regarding use and possession of tobacco products, e-cigarettes, and e-liquids in and on school facilities and grounds. That one's ready for you.
That one's ready. Okay, do you want to have that ready? Oh, what's our schedule? I didn't bring my handbook. Do you want to bring it to the next one?
It's ready whenever you guys want it.
Yeah.
So I can put it in the file and you can start. It's pretty simple. The changes are pretty simple, straightforward. Mostly with it's the vaping, the e-cigarette, e-liquids, those
Okay.
kinds of things.
Okay.
So that's ready. So I can,
Updated
if Kathleen's
substance use.
good with that, we can put it in the folder. And then I can ask her if we can just release the, even though I say 11 policies, I'd say 4 of them are really quick little tweaks. Jack has seen them with Maureen, and I'm trying to think who, so those could be looked at.
All right, that sounds good. We had discussed weapons policy. Do you want to
Look at that.
look at it? Do you want to, like, per our procedure that we discussed before, bring it to policy to see if it's something we want to review?
Sure.
And we would vote as a committee whether or not we want to take it up at this time.
You mean like to the next meeting and make a motion to
Right,
review
I mean,
weapons
I
policy?
think you don't need to make a motion, but I think that we'll add it to the agenda as far as like a proposal for a policy that we may or may not want to review.
Okay.
We'll discuss it as a committee, and then we'll take a vote on whether or not we want to move forward with it. Because we need to then involve the district in that workload, so I just want to make sure the timing is right. But yes, can we add that to the agenda as well, Karen?
Sure.
Yeah, and that's not any, like, you don't need to do anything in terms of language, it's just for discussion.
Bring it in.
So just the,
It's
Yep.
an item on the agenda, action item.
yes,
Sure.
for sure.
Make that happen.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other comments? I love homework.
She wanted homework.
All right, friends, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Karen, are you opposed? No?
No.
All right, this meeting is
Good.
adjourned, 7:12.